Exposed, for spine-chilling terror stories of cursed trailers that remain haunted and unexplained. Jessica had no idea what she was getting into when she pulled into the crooked driveway of her new trailer home. The sun was setting behind her, casting long shadows that danced ominously on the cracked pavement. It was supposed to be their fresh start, the perfect place to escape the chaos left in the wake of a messy divorce. "This is it," she muttered, forcing a smile for her daughter, Sophie, who was peering out the car window, eyes wide with curiosity. Little did they know, the quiet trailer community would soon turn into a living nightmare. The neighbors first appeared friendly, their smiles warm and inviting. Mr. Carson, the elderly man next door, welcomed them with baked goods and offers to help fix leaky faucets. "Don't worry about a thing," he croaked, his voice trembling with age. But soon, strange occurrences began to plague their lives. Odd symbols, like claw marks, were spray-painted on the side of their trailer. Whispers seemed to slither through the night, curling around Jessica's throat like a vice. She convinced herself it was just her imagination running wild, remnants of a lingering fear from her past. But the eerie deep-sighing moans echoed too much like distant cries enough to raise the hairs on the back of her neck. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Days turned into restless nights, and at twilight, she began to see shadows lurking beyond her window. Leery parents whispered tales of the trailer curse, a narrative swirling like autumn leaves around the community. They warned of families vanishing, leaving nothing but memories and ghostly echoes. Yet, naive hope shielded Jessica's heart from the approaching storm of dread. Things took a darker turn when Sophie started drawing images of dark, twisted figures with frightful eyes reaching out for her mother. "Mommy, they're real," Sophie cried one night, a shiver slicing through Jessica like ice. Skeptical, she sought advice from the local sheriff, only to be met with condescending smiles and dismissive reassurances. "Nothing to worry about, just old stories," he chuckled, his face betraying an underlying discomfort. But Jessica could feel it, a heavy atmosphere hanging over the community, a haunting silence that begged to be unraveled. A storm surged in one fateful night, winds howling like a banshee, shaking her trailer. Lightning cracked the sky, an ominous reminder that the dark secrets were rising. And then it happened. Sophie was gone. The heart-stopping fear clawed at Jessica as she stumbled through the panic-stricken neighbors, frantic calls to her daughter echoing into the cacophony. The truth hit her hard. The sinister legacy tied to Mr. Carson and the very trailers surrounding her was no fairy tale. Each whisper of the wind dragged forth memories of tragedy, long buried and overlooked. But how could anyone help her now? The darkest shadows of the night twisted around Jessica, revealing the fragility of her trust. They had welcomed her in with open arms, but what lay beneath the surface was a nightmare waiting to claim not just her daughter, but her sanity as well. As she raced through the storm, the shadows danced closer, as if they were waiting for her to reveal her deepest fears. At that moment, the clock struck midnight. Jessica could feel the welcoming facade of her new home crumble into despair. The community's friendly smiles darkened, and an all-consuming darkness edged closer. Would it claim Sophie, or was Jessica already too far gone? Jessica's heart raced, pounding against her chest like a drum in the stillness of the storm. The wind howled, clawing at her hair as she stumbled toward the space where Sophie had last been. "Sophie! Where are you?" she screamed, her voice swallowed by the tumultuous noise around her. Each trailer stood like grim sentinels, their windows dark, revealing nothing but shadows. The air was thick with tension, as though the very walls were listening. Each turn, every breath echoed with the weight of unseen eyes watching from the dark. She darted towards Mr. Carson's trailer, the one place she felt she might find help or at least an answer. Knocking frantically, her knuckles stinging from the cold, she called out, "Mr. Carson. Please. I need your help." Silence stretched on, deeper than the night itself. Before she could knock again, she caught movement out of the corner of her eye. It was faint, a flutter of darkness blending seamlessly with the shadows cast by the flickering streetlights. Her instincts screamed for her to run, but her feet felt glued to the ground. The shadows seemed to coil and writhe, urging her further into their embrace. Suddenly, a soft whisper brushed against her ear, so close she could almost taste the chill of it. "Help us," the voice breathed, eliciting a shiver that cascaded down her spine. Jessica swiveled around, but the street lay empty, save for the lingering storm. More whispers taunted her, rising up from the depths of her worst nightmares, swirling around her like a suffocating mist. "They didn't listen, they never listened," the voices chanted, a haunting chorus that pulled her back to the memories of families who had vanished without a trace. It felt alive, thick with sorrow and regret, wrapping around her like a shroud. "Stop it!" she yelled angrily, fighting back against the tide of fear threatening to consume her. She wouldn't let the darkness win. Desperate, Jessica's mind grasped for something familiar. She thought of Sophie's drawings, the shadows reaching out. "Where are you?" She squeezed her eyes shut, envisioning her daughter's face, hoping with every fiber of her being that her love could pierce through the veil of horror. But then, through the cacophony of wind and whispered echoes, she heard a child's laughter, thin and haunting. It rang out, both familiar and foreign, dancing through the chaos. Jessica's heart twisted, hope and despair colliding within her. Was it Sophie? Or merely a cruel trick played by the cursed atmosphere? Driven by instinct, she followed the sound, her feet pounding against the gravel. It led her toward the back of the community, where the shadows seemed darker, more alive. Each step felt like a descent into an abyss, threatening to swallow her whole. Ahead, faint flickers of light broke through the darkness. Could it be a glimmer of hope? But as she approached, the laughter turned into something else, sharp, taunting, a wicked glee echoing through the night. As she rounded the corner, the sight before her froze her in place. The chilling figure of a child stood amongst the bushes, the shadows looming impossibly large around her, feeding off the flickering light of an abandoned lamp. Mommy Sophie's voice seemed lost in a whirlwind of distorted laughter and desperation. "Help me!" Jessica's blood turned to ice as she realized the dreadful truth, a sick, twisted joke that resonated through their community. The darkness manifested into something all too real, lingering just beyond her reach. "Stay there, Sophie. I'm coming!" Jessica screamed, pushing through the branches, the laughter growing louder, more sinister. What awaited her in the darkness? Would she rescue her daughter or become another part of this terrifying mystery? And just as she broke through the last barrier, the shadows converged. The coldness seeped into her bones, and everything shifted. What had once glimmered with hope now felt like a trap. In that swirling mass of darkness, Jessica knew something was coming, a revelation that could shatter everything she thought she understood. "It's time to join us," the shadows whispered, and panic surged like a tidal wave. What did the shadows truly want? Would she end up like every other lost soul? As the truth came spiraling down upon her, Jessica realized there was no way back. The night was only beginning, and the dread of what lay ahead seeped into her very soul. What would she have to sacrifice to save her daughter? What nightmare awaited in the depths of that darkness? Jessica pushed through the suffocating darkness, the shadows swirling around her like hungry tendrils. Each breath felt agonizing, her lungs constricting with terror. The laughter faded, replaced by an unsettling silence that hummed ominously in her ears. "Hold on, Sophie. I'm right here," she called out, fear clawing at her throat. But the reply was only the soft rustle of leaves, taunting her with their secrets. The air grew heavier, dense with something unnameable that gripped her heart. With each step, the shadows felt denser, the darkness wrapping around her like a damp shroud. Jessica strained her eyes, searching for any sign of her daughter. Her mind raced through worst-case scenarios. Had Sophie fallen? Had something taken her? A flickering light caught her attention. It pulsed in the distance, faint yet somehow beckoning. Driven by desperation, she moved towards it, fighting through branches that clawed at her like skeletal fingers. Each sharp sting filled her with both urgency and dread. As she neared the light, the whispers returned, filling her mind with chilling echoes of the past. They didn't listen, they can't escape. Each word rolled over her like a cold tide, seeping into her skin, her bones. Jessica squeezed her eyes shut. She needed to block them out, push them away. She had to focus on Sophie. The light before her brightened, revealing a small, grotesque gathering of shadows. Her heart sank as she recognized the playful, twisted elements, toys from lost memories, dolls with eyes that glinted like broken glass, and the remnants of lives that had slipped between the cracks. "Join us," they sang, voices intertwining like twisted vines. Suddenly, a familiar figure darted past the illumination. "Mommy!" Sophie's voice cut through the din, fragile yet filled with fear. The rush of adrenaline surged within Jessica. "Where are you?" she screamed, the desperation twisting her stomach into knots. The darkness thickened around her, almost palpable, as a sudden chill enveloped her. Then she saw Sophie. The little girl stood at the edge of the light, shadows draped across her like a heavy cloak. Her once bright eyes now seemed to shimmer with a dark glint. The laughter that hung in the air was no longer innocent. It was tainted, twisted by the shadows around her. "Come play, Mommy," Sophie beckoned, her voice sweet yet chillingly wrong, pulling at Jessica's heart like a thread unraveling. "I'm coming," Jessica shouted, stepping forward. But the moment she did, the light dimmed. Sophie recoiled, her face clouding with sadness and something deeper, something that hinted at betrayal. The whispers escalated to a deafening roar, drowning out Jessica's heartbeat, compelling her to question everything she thought she knew. Had Sophie changed? Or was the darkness playing tricks on her, manipulating her beloved daughter? "Stay back!" Jessica shouted, sensing a shift in the air, the shadows tightening their grip around her. She could feel their intent, a desire to consume. "Mommy, don't be afraid. They want you to be happy." Sophie's voice was hauntingly melodic, echoing in a way that unsettled Jessica to her core. In that moment, Jessica realized the truth she had dreaded. The shadows didn't just want to claim her, they wanted to keep her. To weave her into their haunting tapestry of sorrow and despair. Jessica's pulse raced. To save herself and Sophie, a choice had to be made. "Stop!" she cried, pushing back against the encroaching darkness. "You won't take her." But the shadows laughed, a thunderous sound that vibrated through her bones. Just then, a surge of clarity washed over her. If she could expose the shadows for what they truly were, perhaps she could save her daughter. "Listen to me," she yelled, her voice breaking through the cacophony. "Sophie is light. You'll never have her." The ground trembled, a response that felt both angry and fearful. The shadows shivered, and for a moment, a crack appeared within their depth, revealing an even darker expanse below. But before she could react, the ground split open at her feet, and the shadows surged toward her like a living wave, hungry and relentless. "Jessica!" Sophie screamed, reaching out, but the silhouette that was once her daughter flickered. What had started as a quest to save her child was turning into something far worse than she imagined. As Jessica felt herself teetering on the brink, she understood there would be no escape from this nightmare unless she faced the terror within. Desperate and resolved, she pulled Sophie's name from her lips like a lifeline. "Sophie, fight them. We're stronger together." But as the darkness swallowed her cries, she couldn't shake the doubt that gnawed at her heart. What if saving Sophie meant losing herself forever? And in that chilling moment, beneath the storm's unrelenting fury, Jessica had to ask herself how far would she go to save what she loved? Jessica's heart thundered in her chest, a wild rhythm of fear as the shadows pulsated around her. She felt them clawing at her skin, seeking to drag her into their suffocating embrace. The dark crack yawned like a pit of despair, endlessly deep and lined with despairing whispers that gnawed at her sanity. "Mommy!" Sophie's voice broke through, a beacon amidst the chaos, but it was fragile, drifting like autumn leaves caught in a storm. Jessica reached for the flickering figure, desperation colliding with dread. "Sophie! I'm here!" she cried, knowing the truth was curling like smoke in her mind. But could she trust what she saw? Sophie was so close, yet so far, a marionette dancing at the edge of a fading light. "Come closer, Mommy," Sophie urged, a hint of something sharp lurking beneath the surface of her words. Jessica hesitated. Her instincts screamed to caution. The shadows tangled and twisted, writhing with a sinister grace, closing in on her from every side. "Don't listen to them," she howled, but her voice felt small against the churning tide of darkness. The shadows were hungry, their laughter echoing like broken glass in her ears. "Join us. Stay forever." They beckoned, their voices forming a hypnotic chant that tugged at her resolve, but Jessica couldn't cave. She took a step back, her resolve crystallizing. "This isn't her. You're nothing but a lie." Her own words felt strange, breaking through layers of horror as she fought the pull of the dark. She needed to believe that Sophie was still inside, waiting to be rescued. The ground beneath her trembled violently, as if responding to her defiance. The crack widened, a gaping maw prepared to swallow everything: Jessica, Sophie, and the last vestiges of hope. "Mommy, please." Sophie's voice was panicked, desperation laced with something darker. "They're lying, don't leave me." The flicker of light surrounding Sophie dimmed like an extinguished candle. Jessica's heart leaped. It was not just fear she felt, but anguish. She took another step back from the brink, grounding herself in the love she bore for her daughter. "Fight it, Sophie!" Jessica yelled, her breath heavy with dread but buoyed by an unexpected fire. "You have to fight." The shadows howled in anger, the roar crashing like waves during a storm. The darkness rolled back slightly, and for a moment, Jessica felt the air clear around them, the screams of shadows stilled. "Mommy," Sophie's voice was softer, more fragile. "I don't feel like me anymore." Jessica's blood ran cold. "What do you mean?" A sliver of fear sliced through her heart. She felt the world teetering on the edge of collapse. The shadows paused, a moment of silence stretching painfully in the air. "I'm scared," Sophie breathed, and that panic ripped through the static in the air. "I can't control it. I'm not me." "Then let us take control back together," Jessica yelled, her voice stronger than she felt. She could feel the shadows pushing against her, but she wouldn't let them win. "You are my daughter. You are light. Remember our games? Remember your laughter?" For a brief moment, Jessica saw the flicker of her daughter within those dark eyes, the girl who loved twirling in the sun, spinning until she was dizzy with laughter. The shadows hissed, their hold already faltering against this small glimmer of hope. "Play with me, Mommy." The twisted echo of her daughter's voice rang in her ears, a haunting melody trying to reel her in. "Not like this," Jessica shouted, feeling her heart break. "Not when you've lost yourself." And then the darkness surged, swarming like a tidal wave. Desperation swelled within Jessica. If she couldn't save her daughter, she wouldn't leave without a fight. With every ounce of strength, she pushed against the darkness, her voice rising above the horrifying din. "I won't let you take her. I refuse." Light startled from within her, fierce and bright. It pulsed and surged as she connected to that part of her that refused to be extinguished, even in this malignant darkness. The shadows screeched in response, writhing and twisting as they felt the strain against. The once familiar voices faded, replaced by a cacophony of sounds that threatened to swallow her whole. "Mommy." "No." Jessica lunged forward, reaching for that precious flicker of Sophie. But the shadows were relentless. The moment seemed to stretch, agonizingly, hopelessly. And just as Jessica grasped for the light, the world around her collapsed, everything went dark. As the silence enveloped her, Jessica struggled to breathe. What had she lost in that final moment? Would her daughter emerge, or would the shadows keep her? A low growl echoed in the silence, a promise of the terror that lurked just beyond her reach. Just wait, they whispered, anticipation glittering in the darkness. What lay ahead twisted in the shadows, a danger that hung heavy like a storm cloud, waiting to unleash its fury. Would Jessica find her daughter, or would the shadow consume them both? A new nightmare loomed, and deep down, she sensed this was only the beginning. Jessica gasped, her body jerking awake as if pulled from an abyss. The darkness enveloped her, thick and suffocating. She strained to hear, but a buzzing filled her ears, a droning hum that sent tremors through her. Panic seized her. "Sophie!" She shouted, a desperate cry that echoed back as if the shadows absorbed it. She blinked, trying to make sense of her surroundings. It felt like being inside a mouth, dark and wet, with something heavy pushing against her chest. The shadows swirled around her like smoke, swirling and twirling, whispering forgotten words that twisted her thoughts. "Mommy," a voice drifted through the thick haze, faint and fragile. It brought her to an immediate halt, the familiar tone slicing through her fear. She turned, eyes darting in search of her daughter, her heart racing, clawing against the darkness. "Sophie!" Jessica called again, but fear tightened its grip each time the echoes faded. What if she was too late? What if the shadows had already taken her? She clenched her fists, grounding herself in the fear of that possibility. Then she noticed something, a faint glow, barely visible amongst the shadows. It flickered like a candle in a windstorm but pulsed with undeniable warmth. Jessica started toward it, each step heavy against that thick carpet of darkness. The whispers grew louder, angry and urgent, clawing at her sanity. "Stay with us. Why fight it? Embrace the power." They promised her control, a chance to play with Sophie forever if only she would submit. Panic tangled inside her, the temptation gnawed. The glow pulsed again, almost a heartbeat of hope amidst the chaos. "Mommy! Help me!" The voice came again, the flickering light growing brighter with every word. Jessica charged, her heart racing with hope and dread intertwined. "I'm coming, sweetheart!" she shouted, pushing against the shadows. They recoiled, skirting back like bruised creatures suffering under her resolve. But as she reached the light, it twisted. Instead of a glimpse of her daughter, it unfurled into a shape she couldn't comprehend, a presence lingering just outside her line of vision, waiting, breathing, hungry. "Mommy, it hurts," the whimper echoed from within the light, churning it until it split apart, revealing a twisted figure. Sophie's face briefly flickered, but then it warped into an expression of pure terror, teeth gnashing and claws forming from the light. Jessica screamed, her heart pounding in her throat, and she grasped for the fading light that pulsed like a heartbeat. No, no, no. This wasn't her daughter anymore, and the pit of realization opened wide within her. The shadows surged again, snaking toward her, determined to drag her into the pit of despair. Jessica turned to run, feet pounding against the invisible ground that shifted beneath her. "No! I won't let you take her." But the darkness was relentless. Tendrils wrapped around her ankles, dragging her down. Jessica strained against them, her hands clawing at the air. Beneath her, the whispers swelled to a maddening crescendo, a symphony of darkness singing praise to its endless hunger. "Join us!" Suddenly, a loud crack split through the cacophony, and the ground beneath her shattered. A brilliant flash surged through the darkness, sending the shadows howling as they dissipated like smoke hit by a flame, then silence. Jessica lay breathless on what felt like solid ground, shaking with a violent tremor. Above her, a glimmer of starlight broke through the black curtain of shadows, illuminating her surroundings just enough to show that she was not alone. A figure loomed in the distance, tall, ominous, and cloaked in darkness, watching. Jessica's heart raced, recognition flickering in her mind. "Sophie?" she called, but the figure did not move. Instead, it emitted a low, terrifying chuckle that sent shivers racing up her spine. "Welcome back, Jessica," the figure purred, its voice a sinister echo. "We've been waiting for you." The terror of her situation crashed over her like an unforgiving wave, leaving Jessica breathless. She had escaped one nightmare only to plunge into another. What had she awakened in the shadows? A new fear settled in her gut, an ember of dread igniting as she bore witness to the true depths of darkness. The figure stepped closer, the mist swirling around its feet. "Your daughter is but one of many we desire." With that, the laughter echoed through the expanse, constricting her heart as new shadows emerged, each one bearing the faces of those lost and consumed. Could she find Sophie now? Or was it already too late? The darkness enveloped her once more, and despair began to creep back in like a thief in the night. Jessica's breath hitched, every heartbeat pounding like a war drum against her ribcage. The figure inched closer, pulling the shadows with it like a veil, whispering promises masked in danger. "You can have her back if you're willing to pay the price." "What do you want?" Jessica shouted, her voice cracking with desperation, needing to rip through the suffocating darkness that surrounded her. The figure paused, its silhouette shifting like smoke. "Not much, just your will, your hope." It stepped into the flickering light, revealing a face that twisted and morphed, taunting her with familiar features, memories made monstrous. "Join us, Jessica. Let go of your fear. Embrace the void." She shook her head, tears of rage and despair filling her eyes. "No. I'll never give in." Each word felt heavy, anchored with the weight of her love for Sophie. The shadows quivered, reacting to her defiance, retreating slightly, but the figure only laughed, an echoing sound that chilled her to the bone. "You think your screams can fight this darkness? You live in denial, child. This is your fate." As if on cue, the ground trembled beneath her once more, splintering slowly like ice cracking underfoot. Jessica stumbled, grasping at the air, the pulsing light flickering as more shadows emerged, each one showing faces she recognized, children lost, adults forgotten, all staring back with hollow eyes. "Mommy." A familiar voice coiled through the darkness, soft yet burdened. "Sophie." Jessica screamed, turning, but the voice came from everywhere at once, deep and aching. The ground beneath twisted again, shadows writhing like snakes, attempting to swallow her whole. "Mommy, help me." Sophie's voice echoed, collapsing into sobs, pulling Jessica further into despair. "Please. I'm scared." "No. I'm coming for you." Jessica pushed forward, but the figure caught her arm with a grip that felt like ice. "You're too late," it hissed, drawing closer, its breath whispering lies into her ear. "Your daughter has already begun the journey." A light illuminated the corner of Jessica's vision, brighter than before, and through the agony of the shadows, she fought back the fear. "Sophie, hold on. I'm right here. Embrace what you can't understand." The figure cackled, the ground buckling further. "Join us or suffer forever." "No." She tugged free, heart pounding a furious rhythm in her chest. Jessica lunged toward the light, knowing this fleeting spark was her only hope. But as she reached out, the shadows grabbed her wrists, pulling her back with a ferocious growl. The light dimmed, threatening to snuff out another flicker of hope. Jessica arched against the pull, feeling hopelessness clawing at her. "I can save you," she cried, her voice rising to a fever pitch. "Sophie, I love you." An answer came not from her daughter, but from the darkness itself. Shadows surged tighter around her, their whispers merging into a deafening roar. "You will never reach her, Jessica. She is ours now. You must pay the price." Before she could stop herself, Jessica felt the remnants of her will ebbing away, fighting a losing battle against darkness that promised so much in return for her surrender. As panic washed over her, an image flashed through her mind, a glimpse of Sophie, surrounded by shadows but still the radiant child she loved. "Mommy. Don't give up." The voice rang out, piercing through the chaos, igniting Jessica's will again. With a primal scream, she yanked her arms free and dove toward the light, desperation pushing her past the creeping tendrils of despair. She clawed forward, even as they wrapped tighter around her legs, biting and clawing. As the light flickered, something in Jessica snapped. "You will not take her from me." The intensity in her voice shattered the last strands of darkness around her, exploding into a brilliant flash of light. And then silence returned, thick and heavy, broken only by her own frightened gasps. But as Jessica steadied herself, she realized something. She was deeper in the shadows than before, the figure now gone but the shadows swirling around her, alive and watching. "Where are you, Sophie?" she whispered, dread threading through her chest as an overwhelming sound whispered back, echoing through the darkness. It's time to choose. What had she unleashed in her struggle? Would she find Sophie before the shadows claimed them both? The shadows writhed around Jessica, dark tendrils swirling with a life of their own. She could feel them, cold and hungry, licking at her arms as she stood paralyzed in fear. "This isn't happening," she muttered, quickly shaking her head as if the motion could dismiss the reality surrounding her. "Choose wisely," a voice echoed from the depths beyond the shadows, smooth and sultry yet dripping with malice. It was a sinister melody weaving through her thoughts, guiding her deeper into the enfolding darkness. "Where are you, Sophie?" she cried, her voice rising, trembling on the edge of desperation. "Where is my daughter?" The shadows shifted, forming a grotesque smile where a mouth should be, and with it came a whisper that seemed to wrap around her. "You have a choice, Jessica. A choice that weighs heavy on your heart." Jessica clenched her fists, blood pounding in her ears. "I want to play your game." The scream erupted from her throat, raw and desperate. "I'll find Sophie. I'll take you on myself." Suddenly, a flicker of light burst to life ahead of her, illuminating the edges of a figure half hidden in the shadows. It flickered like a dying star but beckoned to her nonetheless. "No more games!" she shouted, racing toward the glow. Each step felt heavier, as if the very ground sought to cling to her, but that light, warmth buried within her panic, pulled her like a moth, and then she stopped dead. The glowing figure twisted, revealing a face Jessica recognized too well, a beautiful face marred by shadow and despair. "Sophie!" Jessica breathed, heart soaring for just a moment before crashing back down. The light flickered, and Jessica caught glimpses of her daughter, still trapped in a net of shadows, eyes wide with fear and pleading. "Mommy, help me!" Sophie's small voice echoed, trembling. She stood at the edge of a chasm, framed by swirling darkness. Jessica could feel its cold breath creeping up her spine, threatening to pull her down into its depths. They seemed to whisper promises as they stretched toward her, seductive and sinister. "What do I do?" Jessica screamed into the void, the sound ricocheting off the walls of despair. "Tell me." "You must let go." Sophie's voice softened, each word slicing through Jessica's heart like glass. "Let go of your hope. Embrace the shadows. You can rescue me, but you must be willing to pay the price." "No." Jessica shook her head violently. "I'll find another way." The shadows writhed, rattling like snakes, and something inside her shifted. A sickening dread unfurled as the realization dawned. Her daughter wasn't just trapped, she was becoming one with the darkness. "Choose," the voice from the void cooed, echoing through her mind. "Choose now." Panic surged through Jessica, and she stumbled back. The shadows flickered in her vision, their movement unsettling. "You want to take her?" she shouted. The light flickered, dimming. Sophie's shadowy form seemed to blend into the void, fading with every moment. Jessica hesitated. "Mommy, please, no." The words escaped before she could stop them. Anguish twisted her face as the ground trembled beneath her feet. "Time is running out." The voice hissed, growing deeper, pulsing like a heartbeat. With a sudden surge of courage, Jessica's resolve hardened. "I will not surrender to you," she roared, her breath mingling with fire, turning into determination. And in that moment, the shadows shrieked, recoiling as if struck, the light flickering back into a fierce glow. Building pressure surrounded her, a cage tightening with each heartbeat. Each thrum of her pulse screamed a warning. She raced toward her daughter, determined and fierce. But just as she leaped forward, the ground shattered beneath her, sending shock waves of darkness roaring upward, pulling her into the belly of despair. Jessica reached out, grasping desperately for the light that slipped away. As she fell, screams lost in the darkness, a final thought sliced through the clamor. Am I too late? The void beckoned, waiting to engulf her whole. What choice would Jessica make in her last moment? And would Sophie endure the shadows? Once again. The sensation of falling seemed to stretch infinitely, surrounded by a consuming darkness that wrapped around Jessica like a shroud. She could feel it, cold and clawing, raking at her skin, pulling her deeper into despair. In that swirling void, there was no sense of up or down, just the deafening echo of her heart pounding in her ears. Mommy. Sophie's voice reached out to her from the depths, a frayed string of hope tethered to her heart. Each cry tore through the silence like nails on a chalkboard, making her desperate as she fought against the inevitable. But how could she reach her? The shadows enshrouded her like fog, disorienting and thick. Hold on, sweetie. Jessica's voice came out raw and fierce, despite her growing despair. I'm coming. Suddenly, she felt a rush of adrenaline. The world around her sparked with flashes of that bright light, the flickering beacon of hope she had seen before. The shadows recoiled, hissing at the light that dared intrude upon their domain. Find me. Sophie's voice pierced through, stronger now, as if amplified by the presence of that fading glow. Pushing back against the suffocating darkness, she clawed her way toward the light, fighting the heaviness that threatened to drag her down into the abyss. With every ounce of strength, she summoned memories of laughter, sunny afternoons, and warm hugs. They lit her path, guiding her through the chaotic tantrum of shadows, but then, a sinister laugh rang through the air, vibrating against her bones. You really think you can save her? The mocking voice sang out, wrapping around her like a vice. You're just as lost as she is. No. Jessica screamed defiantly, her eyes ablaze with a fire that she didn't know she had. I won't give in to you. The laughter intensified, echoing menacingly, as waves of darkness swallowed the light. Jessica felt the shift. The shadows began to close in tighter, coiling around her body like serpents. Panic threatened to pull her under anew as they wrapped around her throat, squeezing, suffocating. Choose. The voice demanded again, more feral, more desperate. What do you want from me? She cried, her breath a struggle now. I'll do anything to save her. Anything? Then let go of your reality, it whispered. Step into the abyss. Become one with the darkness. Only then will you have power. A sickening dread rolled in her stomach. Letting go? Embracing darkness? The very thought felt like a betrayal. But she couldn't let Sophie fade into that void. With renewed fierceness, Jessica roared against the constraints of despair. I am not afraid of you. The ground beneath her pulsed, thrumming with her resolve. With a surge that felt like the heartbeat of the earth, she grasped the light, allowing it to wash over her. The shadows howled in fury, screeching as the glow expanded, illuminating the space around her. But as it grew, so did the shadows rage. They shifted violently, pulling her down as she fought to rise. Mommy. Jessica reached out, her heart breaking with each moment of separation. I won't leave you behind, Sophie. Just then, the world around them began to crack, the fabric of reality splintering. Bright fragments of light ricocheted in every direction, casting shadows in a whirlwind. Jessica felt a fracture, a moment where time stood still, suspended between choices she never imagined having. The voice from the void seethed in frustration, growing louder, drowning out Sophie's cries. Then, in an instant, the cavern of shadows began to fold in on itself. "Sophie!" Jessica yelled, her voice becoming a piercing scream as the black tendrils swarmed, eager to consume, and in that fleeting moment, she made her choice. But just as she lunged forward, a thundering boom echoed, and the shadows lunged back, pulling her and Sophie further apart. Light flickered, wavering, as darkness loomed large, ready to claim another lost soul. "Will you both endure this night?" A spine-chilling whisper snaked into her mind. The answer awaited in that suffocating silence, a fate lingering at the edge. What would Jessica sacrifice to emerge from this bottomless void? Jessica gasped. The volatile energy of the moment thrummed through her, alive and suffocating. The thundering boom echoed in her heart as uncertainty spiraled. The night was not just a barrier, it was a living thing, hungry and determined. "Sophie!" She called again, her voice cracking. The shadows were relentless, they pulled at her with an insatiable force, determined to drag her under. Panic clawed at her throat. The air around her shifted, thickening as the darkness swirled, whimpering softly like a wounded animal. "You are weak," the sinister voice quipped, now filled with chilling glee. But her cries, they are a feast. "No." Jessica felt fury rise, molten and burning. "You won't take her." She pushed through the enveloping cold, moving toward the remnants of light, but with every step, the shadows retaliated, biting and gnashing, caressing her with icy fingers. They whispered promises, tempting her with visions of power and understanding. If only she could surrender. The thought nearly rooted her in place. It would be so easy to slip into their embrace. To relinquish responsibility, to silence the ache clawing at her heart. But then, Sophie's voice broke through, a fragile lifeline. "Mommy! Mommy, please!" Jessica stumbled, each word from Sophie pulsing with desperation. "I'm here!" she shouted, her resolve igniting anew. Just as the darkness surged, nearing its grasp, the crack in reality widened. Shards of light sliced through the void, hitting her like warm rain on a cold day. It ignited something fierce and wild inside her. Gathering every shred of courage, she lunged toward the light, the shadows shrieking in protest as she fought her way through the tempest. The void split, revealing a tunnel of shifting color, a kaleidoscope of hope. The walls of shadow writhed, but Jessica pressed on, heart hammering with determination. "Mommy, don't leave me." "No, I won't. I promise." She gasped, bolting through the fragile passage, praying the light wouldn't fade just as her dreams began to form. Suddenly, everything froze. An overwhelming cold swept over her, piercing her soul. She found herself at the edge of a barren landscape, an expanse of black earth stretching infinitely beneath an ominous sky. A figure appeared in the distance, cloaked in shadows, peering back at her from far away. It was her, or at least, a version of herself twisted and warped. Its eyes glowed with the same fierce determination Jessica felt in her core. "You are not welcome here," the dark reflection hissed. Jessica's breath hitched. "I am. I'm here for my daughter." The figure laughed hollowly, a sound that echoed through the empty space like shattered glass. "You want to save her? You must first save yourself." Just then, a scream cut through the air, Sophie's scream. It tore through every defense Jessica had left, shattering the icy grip of despair like fragile glass. "No! I can do this!" Rushing forward, she reached out to touch her dark reflection. With an electrifying pulse, the jagged wound of the void began to close. The shadows trembled, screeching in a frenzy of rage. But as Jessica strained against the weight of her doppelganger, a new light sparked, blooming into existence, a fiery orb of warmth that surged with each heartbeat, radiating through the darkness. "What is that?" The figure shrieked, panic betraying its monstrous facade. "It's my will!" Jessica screamed, voice rising. "My hope! My love!" For the first time, she stepped back, embracing both light and darkness. I choose to fight. As the pulse intensified, radiating around her, the shadows crackled, flickering like a dying ember. But the darkness wouldn't soothe so easily. The roar returned like a tempest, threatening to pull her apart. As Jessica plunged forward toward the blinding light, the world behind her began to fray, unwinding as shadows clawed futilely at her retreating form. "Mommy!" That voice called out again, raw and filled with hope, and then, silence. What she began to realize, however, was that silence seldom meant peace. Desperation loomed, capturing her in its grasp. The darkness might have lost this battle, but it would not let them go easily. "Remember," echoed that dreadful whisper, trailing off into the distance. "You have chosen, but at what cost?" Jessica felt the weight of that question crack the fragile tranquility. The light flickered ominously, and the ground trembled beneath her feet. What would she have to confront to secure her daughter's safety? Would the path ahead lead her to freedom, or deeper into the abyss? Jessica's heart raced as she pushed through the swirling remnants of shadow and light. Each breath felt like a labor, the weight of despair pressing down hard against her chest. "Sophie!" She screamed, the name breaking free from her lips like a desperate plea. The darkness hissed around her, but she couldn't falter. She wouldn't. The echoes of her daughter's cries sparked fury within her. She broke into a run toward the pulsing sphere of light, warmth flooding her senses. With every step forward, she felt strength building, bolstered by love. "I'm coming, babe. I'm right here." The air around her began to thrum, a chorus of her strength pushing against the shadows that loomed, hungry and unyielding, but then she stumbled, the ground beneath her cracking again as the ominous figure of her dark reflection loomed closer, rage emanating from it like a consuming void. "You cannot defeat me. You cannot save her." It screeched, its voice unfamiliar yet eerily resonant. "I'm not trying to defeat you," Jessica shouted defiantly, her pulse quickening. "I'm trying to save my daughter." She pressed against the shadows, the warm light beckoning just ahead. The figure screeched in anger, but doubt flickered in its eyes. Was it afraid? The shadows wrestled, thrashing around her, wanting to pull her back into the depths. But she fought. She took the strength from every moment spent with Sophie, laughter, play, bedtime stories where dreams felt real. Every memory became a shield. "Hope isn't weak. It's our bond. Sophie and I are stronger than you." The figure trembled, shadows flickering at its edges as Jessica drew closer. "You're weak," it spat, venomous, but Jessica could see it now, crumbling beneath the weight of her determination, splintering like glass. "Your power is built on fear, but I choose love," she cried, pure conviction radiating from her as that fiery orb surged brighter, reflecting the light from within her. The shadows hissed, retreating slightly, as if the very essence of hope was burning them away. "Mommy!" Sophie's voice floated through, filled with both fear and trust. The shadows writhed, their grip lessening as Jessica grasped the light. "I'm here. Just hold on." She leaped, aiming for that crack of warmth piercing the cold. With a roar, the void shattered. A radiant light erupted, cascading away the shadows and darkness that had imprisoned them for so long. Jessica felt the shards of pain and loss weeping away as they were replaced with clarity. The world shifted, colors blending with golden warmth. Suddenly, she was standing in a field of sunlight, flowers blooming in brilliant hues beneath a blue sky. She stood alone for a moment, heart pounding as she looked around. And then she saw her. Sophie appeared in the distance, the sunlight dancing in her hair, laughter ringing like wind chimes. "Mommy!" she yelled, running toward her, innocence radiating with every step. Jessica's heart soared, the weight of everything lifting as she dropped to her knees, arms open wide. They collided in a burst of laughter and tears. "I was so scared," Sophie sobbed as she buried her face in Jessica's shoulder. "I thought I wouldn't see you again." "I'm here, sweetheart. I'm here, and I won't let anything take you from me again, Jessica whispered, rocking her daughter gently, grounding them both in love. As they pulled away, Jessica noticed pale smudged shadows creeping along the edges of the meadow. The darkness would never fully dissipate. That much was clear. But this time, it felt different, faded, distant, lacking the fear it once held over them. We did it, Mommy. Sophie breathed, her eyes bright with hope. We're stronger together, Jessica replied with a smile, knowing they had faced the shadows and emerged alive. And I'll always fight for you. As she looked deep into Sophie's eyes, the scars of their past began to heal, and the weight of loneliness lifted. They had faced the darkness and conquered its grip, not with surrender, but through the power of love and courage. The shadows may still linger on the edges of their lives, but together they could learn to live with the light. We're free, Jessica said, grasping her daughter's hand tightly, feeling the warmth and the promise of a new beginning. And as the sun set, casting a beautiful glow over the field, they stepped forward together, knowing they'd overcome the terror that once consumed them. Now, this is where you come in. Subscribe immediately so you don't miss our next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and keep the thrill alive. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about the ending. And for the love of suspense, instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to support the channel, so don't wait even one more second to show your affection.